Okay, welcome back to Christian Students at UC's Kitchen. What's cooking? Okay, we've been talking a lot about eating. We covered eating the Passover lamb in previous episodes. Today we're going on to continue the line of eating, the diet of the children of Israel. Okay, so what we've covered is in Egypt, the Lord led them out through the Passover lamb, through the blood and even the lamb itself that sustained them to get out. Then they crossed through the Red Sea, and this was baptism that closed off everything, crucified the world to them, and they were crucified to the world. Now we're at another juncture. In the wilderness, as they're coming out of Egypt, there were about 2.2 or so, about 2 million children of Israel. They had grown pretty large. Okay, how did that happen? Well, they were in Egypt 430 years. Being in Egypt 430 years, they just multiplied and grew. And I don't know if you remember, but during those years, Pharaoh at one point began to kill off the children of Israel. Even all their male born, all their boys that were born, Pharaoh was killing off. And one was preserved at that juncture, and that was Moses, who later now is leading the children of Israel, about 2 million of them, out of the land of Egypt into the wilderness to follow after God. Okay, 2 million people. That's like all of Cincinnati. Cincinnati's about 2.2 million people. Imagine leading all of Cincinnati. Get up, pack your goods, and let's go. And that's exactly what Moses did. Now, what did they pack up? Well, the Bible tells us explicitly. In particular, they packed up their herds, their flocks, and their dough. And this was to be their nourishment and their supply as they were coming out and being led into the wilderness. Okay, now, where are we today? Today, we're going to cover a particular story and what happened with their sustenance, their food, their provision. Well, at one point, 31 days later, they completely ran out of food. 31 days later, they ran out of their flocks, their herds, they went through all their dough. And so at that point, they began to complain. After seeing all the miracles done in Egypt, after seeing the breaking open of the Red Sea that they could walk through on dry land, and the Red Sea collapsing on all of Pharaoh and his army, after seeing all of these miracles, they began to complain. Why did you lead us out here? Why are we even here? Oh, they began to look back at their experience in Egypt. So we're going to read a couple of verses that describe to us this particular scene. We're going to start with Acts chapter 7, verse 39. And here it says, "To him," it's talking about Moses, "our fathers, all the children of Israel, 2 million, were not willing to become obedient. They began to rebel against Moses. And so then it says, they thrust him away," Moses, "and turned in their hearts to Egypt." In their hearts, they began to turn back to the things that they just had come out of. Wait a minute, what did they just come out of? Well, we think Pharaoh, right? We think enslavement. We think tyranny. But what did they remember? Well, at this point, in Exodus 16, verse 3, it reads, "And the children of Israel said to them, 'If only we had died by the hand of Jehovah in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill the whole congregation with hunger.'" So, they're looking back at Egypt, at all of the things that supplied them, that satisfied them. They forgot everything about Pharaoh killing off their children, Pharaoh's tyranny, Pharaoh's enslavement. All they remembered were all the pleasures of Egypt. So, what do you have? Well, after 430 years of being in Egypt and growing up in Egypt and eating Egyptian food, when they came out, you know what you had in the wilderness? God had there Egyptians. Yes, they were God's people. They were children of Israel. But in their constitution, they were just Egyptian. They've been eating Egyptian food for 430 years. None of that was going to change. What satisfied them, what supplied them, what energized them was all Egyptian. And so what they would long after was all Egyptian elements. Nothing of godly food or of the godly element. So, one question here. Why would God wait until they had exhausted all of their food supply? Eventually, we know God began to feed them with manna. That was a heavenly bread, a bread that came down out of heaven. Okay. So why would he wait until they had exhausted all of their food? Okay, the reason is he needed them to see what was in them. So this was a divine delay in the food supply. That what was really in them, in their constitution, would be manifest. Otherwise, they think they're okay. They think, oh yeah, we're here to love the Lord, to serve the Lord. But one thing about the Bible that it tells us is that God would never use Egyptians to build up his house. God would use a heavenly people to build up his house. So then what does God do to change their constitution from being Egyptians to a heavenly people? He began to supply them a heavenly bread. He began to supply them in a way to change their diet, that their diet would change their constitution. They were constituted with the Egyptian element. The only thing that satisfied them would be Egyptian. The only thing that would provide them satisfaction would be something Egyptian. It was their culture. It was their food. Okay, this is just like us. We may have come out of Egypt. We experienced the Passover lamb who died for us. We've received the Lord as our life. We've been baptized. We want to give him our lives. We want to follow him. But guess what? It's just Egyptians wanting to serve the Lord and to love him. And how is that manifested? Well, what satisfies you? What supplies you? What sustains you? Sometimes when we're going through a hard time and exams come upon us, situations come upon us, we just start to think, oh, I just need to spend some time on YouTube, decompress. I just need to watch this, learn about that. Oh, you just a thirst for knowledge. You have to understand this and understand that. A thirst for sports. Oh, I just need to go play a little bit of this. Okay, listen, I'm not trying to say, oh, we need to get rid of the world, not love the world. That's not the point of this story. The point of this story is this is our constitution. We're just Egyptians. So what did the Lord do? He didn't rip these things away. He changed their diet. And he began to give them heavenly food. Manna, which came down out of heaven. Now, John chapter 6 tells us Christ is a reality of that manna. He's the living bread that came down out of heaven. We all know this. Even unbelievers know this. But what does it practically mean to us? What does it mean for him to be our manna? How do we experience him as the manna? Well, this is why we look back at the story, to look at the details of the story, to learn how to change our diet from an Egyptian diet to a heavenly diet. That God would have a heavenly group of people through whom he could establish his building on the earth, his house. Okay, so we have to get into the characteristics of the manna to understand how to apply gathering the heavenly food in our daily life for our provision. Okay, we're going to get into 4 characteristics. The first one is they gathered it early. So in Exodus 16:21 it reads, and they gathered it morning by morning, each one according to his eating. And when the sun became hot, it melted. So the manna was available for all the people to gather early in the morning. And when the sun became hot, it was gone. The opportunity was lost. What does it mean for the sun to wax hot? It means when the affairs of the day start churning and start getting active, there's no more opportunity to stop and to gather the manna. So this is just like us. Every morning we start thinking about, oh, the assignments I have to do today, the exams I have coming up, oh, the homework I've got to do, I've got to go see a counselor, this, that. You wake up and suddenly the sun is waxing hot. Well, we have to learn as heavenly people is to wait. The sun can wait. Just gather the manna. How do you gather? It means you open your heart to the Lord. If you've never done this, start with 30 seconds. Open your eyes early in the morning before you get up and start to take care of all of the activities of the day. You open your heart to Him and you say, Lord, I need you. I love you. I open wide to you today. Gain me a little more. Okay, maybe you do this already. Well, here's a target for you. 15 minutes. Reading the Word. Spending time with Him. Eating more solid food with the Lord. Okay, second characteristic. They gathered it daily. Exodus 16 verse 19. And Moses said to them, let no man leave any of it until the morning. But they did not listen to Moses. This is just like all of us. We'll spend some time with the Lord. We'll read the Bible. And then a day or two go by. And we come back. And then we complain just like the Egyptians. Why am I here? Well, guess what? Because nobody can live off of what they ate 3 or 4 days ago. This is a daily matter. We have to learn in our Christian life to gather the manna daily. You cannot live off what you ate yesterday, what you experienced yesterday, or 2 days ago. Maybe 3 days ago you had an awesome experience in reading the Bible or having fellowship with someone. But guess what? That will not sustain you and supply you for 3 days later or 4 days later. Each day has its own heavenly supply. So we have to learn to live like this, to be reconstituted day by day. Number 3, they had to process it. Okay, what they gathered, it didn't go from the ground to their hands to their mouth. They had to process it. What does this mean? Well, let's read the verse. Numbers 11 verse 8. The people went about and gathered it and ground it between 2 millstones and beat it in a mortar. When they had boiled it in pots and made cakes of it, and its taste was like the taste of cakes baked in oil. Okay, that means what you gather does not become your supply immediately. It's processed. Okay, what does this mean? When you open up to the Lord in the morning, you read a verse, you enjoy that verse. Okay, it's like your groceries. You go to the local supermarket, you grab some groceries, some good apples, some good carrots, other groceries. Oh, great! Well, guess what? They don't go straight from there into your mouth. You wash them. You cut them. You process them. You bake them. Well, what does all this mean? This is your daily life. In your daily life, the things that you go through, the people in your study group, the events, the guy in the bus sitting next to you, all of these things, missing the bus, all of those things are meant to process the heavenly groceries you gathered in the morning. So that is when you apply what you read that morning. Your prayer that you prayed that morning. Maybe you prayed, Lord, gain me a little more today. Well, when you miss that bus and you're at the bus stop and you have to wait another 15 minutes and class starts in 10, guess what you do? You start to beat that manna that you gathered in the morning. Lord, I said, gain me today. Gain me right now. I'm anxious. Lord, I just open to you right now. I don't want to live in my anxiety. This is what it means to process the manna. Okay, last one, number 4. The last one we're going to cover. Well, this one's in Exodus 16:33. And it tells you what they had to do with 1 omer, it's a certain measurement the children of Israel use, of manna. They had to gather a little bit of manna. And it says, and Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omerful of manna in it and place it before Jehovah to be kept throughout your generations. Okay, So there was one portion of manna that they put inside of a pot. And that pot they put inside of a box. It's called the Ark of the Testimony. It was a box. And that box is where they could converse with God. And that box was inside the Holy of Holies, which was the center of the tabernacle, which was just a tent. But it's the tent that the priest would enter into, go to the center of the tent, which was the Holy of Holies, go to the Ark of the Testimony, which was the box, and there they could speak with God. And at the center of the box was some of the manna. Well, the tent was situated in the middle of all of God's people. So at the very center of God's people and their daily life was the manna. What is what centers you? As a Christian, at your very center should be the manna that you collect of Christ. The daily bread we have of him. The daily experiences of eating him and having him as our supply, our satisfaction, our joy. The daily provision that we get from Christ. That is what centers us in our whole Christian life. Okay, so that's manna. You are what you eat. You eat Egyptian food, you're an Egyptian. And God could never use an Egyptian to build his house. You eat manna, you become a heavenly man. It's just like a flamingo. Flamingos are pink. But you know why they're pink? Because all they eat in their diet are pink shrimp. That's true. Look it up. Google it. It's the same with us. If we eat the heavenly bread, we become the heavenly people that God can use for his purpose today.